Suppose you never heard the name of Allah. Suppose you never heard the name of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Suppose you never saw Salat. You didn't know anything about dhikrullah. How would your life be? Think about that. Suppose. I tell you, you can't imagine. You're very lucky. Well, the house that I grew up in, and so many people like me, that's exactly the situation. No name of Allah, no name of Muhammad, no Quran, no dhikrullah, no song, no hajj, no nothing. So, what was the purpose of life? Well, I remember when I was a small child, and I was sitting on the sofa with my mother. And I was probably around 5 years old. This is one thing that I remember very vividly in my young childhood. I don't remember much, but I remember this one incident very well. And so I was sitting. Now, my father comes from a Jewish family, but my father was actually an atheist. Like many, Jews, they say we're Jewish, but actually they don't believe in anything. The founder of Zionism, Theodore Herzl, he was an atheist. The founder of Zionism, the founder of Israel, he was an atheist. So it was basically. So my father was from this kind of camp. My mother's side, they were Christians, and my great-grandfather was a famous missionary priest in India, and his sister, my great-aunt, she was an eye surgeon in India. She spent her whole life serving the Christian religion as a missionary doctor, and she's buried there in India. She was the only one who objected to me being a Muslim, and I didn't even know her, I never saw her. She wrote a long letter from India. What did you do, Yeah, that's long later. So I'm around 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old, and I'm sitting with my mother. And behind our house there was a synagogue, Jewish synagogue. Our neighborhood was a Jewish neighborhood. But we never saw that place. We never went inside it. We don't know what they do. So I asked my mother, I said, Mother, why the people on Saturdays, and so the Jewish people go to the synagogue on Sunday, the Christian people go to the church on Sunday, but we never used to do that. So I asked my mother, why don't we do like that? Most of the people, they go to the synagogue, they go to the church. Why don't we do that? I mean, I don't even know what they do there, but everybody's doing that. So why not I? Why don't we do that? So she said, well, if we did that, we can't do the things that we like to do on the weekend. We want to enjoy. So when I was a child, actually my whole family, they were musicians. And they were into horses, horse riding. For fun. So when I was a kid, like when you're, the young Muslim children.
Yeah.
So they go to the Sheikh or the Qari, and they learn Quran and yeah? Right? So when we were kids, my father was like this for riding horses and all that. So, but that's all we do. We don't know anything about religion, we don't know anything about God, we don't know anything about ruhaniya, spiritual things, So basically, the whole object of life is like most of the people we see. Go to a good school, starting with the kindergarten. In those days, if you were a child, you could be a child until you were about 6 years old. Now they don't let you do that. When you're 2.5, you have to get into the system. Start preparing you to be a gear in the system. Right? So then you go to the best possible grammar school, and you ask why. Well, because you have to go to a good middle school. But why? Well, because you have to go to a good high school. Why? So you can go to the university. Why? Because you need to get a good job and a good career. Why? So you can make a lot of money. Why?
Get family.
So you can be happy. Oh yeah? The funny thing is, this is what most people think, right? We'll come to Australia, we'll go to America, we'll get money and we'll be happy. How many people are happy after they get that money? Very few, if any. Okay. So anyway, I'm writing a book about all this because everywhere I go, people are asking, and so ultimately, because it's a very long story. Because from childhood, it's an ongoing story. So, but anyway, so long story short, so in my childhood, we have no religion, but our religion is basically, I'm a young musician, and my family are musicians, and my life is about music, and we ride horses, and ultimately we moved to the country in Colorado, a big ranch, 500 acres in the middle of nowhere. And so another thing that I liked when I was a child was, even though I didn't know anything about religion, but I loved to be out in the nature. I loved to be out in the mountains, with these big mountains, And so I used to go there and spend hours and hours just out in the mountains. And I used to climb up on top of these mountains, and I would just look around. I'm a young kid, 12, 13 years old. And I started looking around, and mountains and sky and all these amazing animals. And in the night, in the mountains, I don't know, anybody comes from the mountains? In the mountains, when you look up in the night, and we used to go for hunting, and we would go out in the wilderness, we'd stay for days out there. And you look up at the sky has got millions and millions of stars, and you see these shooting stars, and you see it, and I started just look at these things. And I said, wait a minute, all this creation, and no creator? I said, it's not possible. Yeah, it's simple. But my father was very, very staunch. Religion, it's haram to talk about religion. You can't stay in the house, I'm starting to say, no, it just doesn't make any sense. Okay, now, when I was around 15 years old, so we had actually a resort out there in Colorado. It was a place where people would come and they would ride horses and go in the mountains. We used to entertain them. But then ultimately my mother and father, they were having problems, and ultimately my mother and father divorced. So we go with my mother to California, Los Angeles. What's in Los Angeles? Well, for the musician, Hollywood. That's the main thing. So now, a young musician, I'm going to Hollywood, that's the greatest thing, right? But I don't know what goes on in Hollywood except what you see in the movies, right? Or you hear on the records. Because I've lived most of my life in the wilderness, in the rural areas and in the mountains, and so now I come to Hollywood and I want to be a young musician and join the groups and so where we lived in California, was in Los Angeles, it was near an area known as Beverly Hills. You might have heard of Beverly Hills, Bel Air. That's the poshest area of the United States. The richest people in the United States live there. Maybe New York can compete with them, or maybe they're, but that's one of the top places everybody has heard of it. So when I went to high school, my classmates were all these kids from these rich kids from Bel Air and from Beverly Hills. Most of them Jewish also. So most of my friends were these very, very wealthy young Jewish kids. And all of them, I'm telling you, all of them, without exception, every single one of them was going to the psychiatrist. Think about that. This is 1960s. This is not like, now with all this trauma. This is 1960s. This is, 7 years ago? 60 years ago. Not only that, but psychiatrists, they charge a lot of money. And psychiatrists in Beverly Hills, whoa, And so the kids used to brag, who my psychiatrist is? We used to call him head shrinker. Because your head is about to blow up, so you need somebody to shrink it, So they said, my psychiatrist is so-and-so, he charges. And so they're bragging about how, about their psychiatrists, how crazy they are. And then, so I used to go and visit them in their houses. At least in my house, we were family, were close, and my brothers and sisters. But in these houses, and by the way, they did all of that. The best grade school, the best middle school, the best university, the best career, the big money, the biggest houses in America. And the whole family is mentally completely disastrous. Schizophrenia, neurosis, depression. So I'm visiting my friends in these houses, and these people are all, they are in torment. The parents, they can't get along with the children can't get along with their parents, and the brothers and sisters. So I started thinking, you've all heard the American dream, have you heard about that? The American dream? Well, that's the American dream. One of the comedians of that era, he said, why do they call it the American dream? Because you'll never believe it unless you're asleep. So, I'm looking at these people, these poor people, really you feel sorry for them. A number of them committed suicide. A number of my best friends, they ended up dying on overdoses of heroin. Why do they need to do that? They've got the American dream, they've got the biggest, best house, they got all the money, they got everything. But they are totally unhappy. Totally, panishan, say. Totally mentally disturbed. So now, around this time, in about the mid-1960s, so my generation, a lot of people, particularly musicians, artists, intellectuals, they started thinking that something's really fundamentally wrong in our society. Why do we have so much mental illness? Why do we have so much depression? Why do we have so much, what's going on? We have everything. We have more than anybody in the world. And yet we don't have peace of mind. I tell you one thing. Fast forward in Pakistan in the 1980s. It's a case in point. So, as I was teaching in madrasa there in Pakistan, so of course much later in the 1980s. So one friend of mine, he used to he was a very successful exporter of cloth. So he used to have these customers that would come from all over the world, and they would buy cloth in huge millions of yards, very wealthy people. And so my friend, he would call me and we would give dawat to these people. They weren't Muslims, they were Christians or Jews or whatever. So this fellow came from America, and he was one of the biggest importers of cloth in the United States. They're very nice fellows. So my friend wanted me to talk to him. I said, okay. So we decided we'll have breakfast at the Sheraton Hotel, big hotel in Karachi. So we're there at the hotel, and the whole place, the whole restaurant is packed. Every table full of people. And the three of us were sitting, and this fellow was telling us about his life. And he says, he was nice, he wasn't bragging, he wasn't being arrogant, he was just telling us about his life. He said, look, whatever money you can buy, I have that. I mean, anything you want that money can get you, I have all that. What kind of house you want? I got that. What kind of cars? I have fleets of cars. Private plane, swimming pool, tennis court, whatever you can get with money, I have that. But I'm not happy. As a matter of fact, he said, I'm very lonely. This guy's got everything. But he has nothing, right? But he don't have peace of mind. Therefore, then he says, Ala inna al-ghina nafs. What is wealth? Wealth is satisfaction of the heart. You don't feel happy outside. Your pocket doesn't feel happy. Your house doesn't feel happy. Your heart feels happy. And that comes with dhikr. Allah bi dhikrillahi tatma'inna al-qulub. It doesn't come from any of those things. That has nothing to do with it. In fact, there's a recent study in one of the major universities in America. They were studying about happiness because very few people have it. So it's become a very important topic, right? Because they want to be happy. Everybody wants to be happy. Nobody's happy. So they did a study to see what makes people happy. I mean, for us, that's not a problem. The Quran is very clear. So they found that the more your object of life is material-based, money, things, the less you're going to be happy. And Prophet ﷺ also indicated why. Prophet ﷺ, he said, look to the people who are below you in the worldly benefits. Don't see the people who have more than you. Don't look at that. Look at the people who have less than you. هذا أجل أن تزدري نعمة الله عليك. That's going to be more convincing for you and more meat to cause you to be grateful for what Allah has given you. Whereas we're looking at, he's got that, that's why these young kids, they become suicidal. In fact, a lot of young kids actually commit suicide now. Why? One of the major reasons is because social media. They see on Facebook, they see on Instagram, they see on TikTok, these other kids, they have this, they have that, they have all this, and poor me. And so then they found that the people who are happy, they found always the higher your object of life is away from material, a higher objective in life, the happier you're going to be. One of the great ulama of Islam, Sheikh Islam ibn Taymiyyah, you probably would have heard his name. He said, what can my enemies do to me? If they kill me, I'm a martyr. Alhamdulillah. Right? In Qataluni, فأنا شهيد. And if they put me in the prison and lock me up, it's khalwa. Khalwa, I'll be alone with Allah again. That's also good. Wonderful. وإذا نفوني فسياحة. And if they expel me and they, expel me from the country, then I'll be able to travel around, vacation, holiday, whatever you want to go. Right? And Nabi alayhi salam, he says, it's very amazing about the people of Iman because everything happens to them, it's good for them. If they get something they like, they do shukr and that's good for them. If they get some problem, difficulty, they make sabr, and that's better for them. But this is only for the people of Iman. If we don't have Iman, we get a ni'mat. Yeah, but he's got more than me. And if we get musibat, why is God doing this to me? So we'll complain in musibah and we'll be ungrateful in ni'mat. The people who don't have Iman. So the people who have a material object of life, they are definitely going to be unhappy. So back to my high school days. So in my high school, I'm seeing these people have all this material, and that's their object of life. They don't have any other object. So they are really, really disturbed. So a number of us in that era, as I mentioned, some of us, we start realizing that we have another dimension in our life. We're not just a stomach and what's below the stomach. We have a soul, we have a ruh, which we don't know anything about. Atheists, they don't know anything about ruh. They just know that, when you die, something happens and you're no longer alive. They don't realize that there's a soul. When a person dies, what happens? In Arabic, what we say, intaqala ila rahmatillah. He's gone away to the rahmatullah, right? Those who speak Urdu, they say, intiqalu, He's gone. It's all about he's gone somewhere. He didn't go anywhere. He's right there. Right? Body is there, mind is there, kidney there, heart, brain, everything. Nothing is gone. Except one thing. What? Soul. That's the essence of the human being. The body is the transport. So who should get more attention? The car or the driver of the car? Huh? Who's in charge? We're supposed to be in charge. I think with AI, maybe the car's going to take charge, and the poor man is going to, he's going to be right. The car's going to be riding the man. But it's not supposed to be like that, right? So this is the transport. The rider is what? The ruhr. But we don't give any attention to that ruhr. My sheikh used to say that our example is like the example in the old days. In the old days, people used to ride on donkeys, right? Still in Pakistan, we see donkeys every now and again. Yeah. We see two-legged donkeys, we see a lot of them, but four-legged ones also still we have, sometimes. So, suppose your friend comes, he's riding on his donkey, he comes, he knocks on the door, and you, Assalamu alaikum. So you tell your friend, okay, stay out there, outside the door. And you take the donkey by the hoof, you bring him in, put him on the sofa, give him a cold drink, give him a nice Bangladeshi sweet, and nice biryani, kabsa, and all this kind of thing. And then for the rider, you send him out some hay and some water. So how does that look? Does that look appropriate? Looks pretty foolish, doesn't it? Well, that's exactly what we do. Because this body, we're very particular what we clothe it, what we feed it, how we manicure it, how we make up it, and whatever. And the poor ruh, we have to make salat, bismillah, and then quickly go back to the feeding and clothing and all that. So our poor ruh is starving, it's hungry, thirsty. So suppose we don't give anything to the ruh. We don't even recognize that it exists, and what happens is that ultimately, just like a human body, if you don't feed it, if you don't nourish it, if you don't take care of it, ultimately it gets sick, and then what happens? It dies. So similarly, if we don't feed our soul, we don't feed our ruh, we don't give it its ghidha, its nourishment, it will become weak, it will become sick, and ultimately it dies. And when the soul dies, we have this thing, you ever heard of zombies? These movies, the zombies, these, Hollywood has these guys, they're dead, but they're alive and they're really. It's interesting that they have this, it was a big deal in America, I don't know about Australia, but these zombie movies and kids would dress up like zombies. So why are you so interested in zombies? Because that's actually how most of the people are today. The Prophet ﷺ says, مثل من يذكر ربه والذي لا يذكر ربه كمثل الحي والميت. The person who remembers Allah is like living. The person who doesn't remember Allah is dead. So these people that don't remember Allah, so they're like zombies actually. So some of us started realizing that this is war. This is where we're not paying attention. We need to pay attention to it. So we don't know anything about Islam. So people like us, what we do is we know about Judaism, we know about Christianity, we're not finding the answers that we want there, so what we do, we start looking to the Eastern religions. People go to India, people go to Nepal, and we start studying about Hinduism, we start studying about Buddhism, doing yoga, standing on our heads and doing all these exercises, fasting on water for a week at a time, don't eat anything. And this meditation, these kind of exercises. So we start learning about these kind of things, and so I started doing these kind of things. But still, I wasn't satisfied. And then in the 1968, I had work in Japan. We had a group, we went to Japan and we recorded there. We did a lot of concerts and we're very famous over there. And I was getting more and more unhappy. There's this material, and just. So in between engagements, so I would take off, leave the band, and I would go up into the mountains in Japan and go to the Buddhist monasteries and stay there for some days. Try and get my head back together and get some kind of. And then I would come back, and then, of course we have to perform and move all around. So ultimately then I came back to America, and then I used to go, as a musician, so you spend your time in the nightclubs, you spend your time in recording studios, and it's a very, very terrible environment. So I began to go more and more. I would leave and spend some days going to the mountains or going to the desert by myself, and I would fast, and I would do yoga, and I would meditate, whatever I could. Then ultimately, it appeared to me that all this life that we're living, this is all just a waste of time and just a waste of life. And I was seeing at the same time many of my colleagues. We have in the music world, we have a club called the 27 Club. And this is a club where you have these mostly musicians, but you have other people also, like actors and other celebrities, who died at the age of 27. Out of a whole big club of them. You had Jimi Hendrix, you had Janis Joplin, you had Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones, you had all these people. So by the time they were 27, so much alcohol and drugs and, so mostly drug overdoses, One of the most famous groups, the fellow was found in the bottom of his own swimming pool, drunk and with, all these drugs. And so I watched my colleagues dying like this. And I said, this doesn't make any sense. I don't want to do like this. And so I finally decided that leave all of this, because this is just not only it's a waste of time and it's a very toxic environment, but it's very dangerous. And I'm watching my colleagues, die off like this. So then I decided, okay, I need to find where is that, because I've already seen Judaism, I've seen something of Christianity, Judaism, I've seen something of Hinduism, Buddhism, and it appeared to me that all of these religions, they had some common features. And the common features of that were, number one, there's a creator, there's a higher intelligence that's running the universe. In spite of my father's indoctrination in childhood. But it seemed to me that yes, you have these holy people coming, these people who are very connected with God, prophets, holy people. And this is what they were talking about. They were talking about there's a creator of this universe, which I understood that. Because you look at creation, you've got to have a creator. You know what? I was just sitting one day, and all of a sudden, this wire came out of nowhere, and this thing just came, and it just, I have a microphone. Can you believe that? Is it possible? No, it can happen. Call the ambulance. This guy's got a problem, So you have a problem that this just happened to come together. It's a bit complicated, but is this as complicated as the universe around us? Billions of light years of expansiveness, there's no creator for that, no controller, nobody running the show? It's not possible. So I came to this conclusion that all these people like Jesus and Moses and Abraham and these mystics from the East, they're all talking about pretty much the same thing. And I realized that there has to be one creator controlling this whole universe, can't be otherwise. And all these fellows were all connecting and telling us that's where you have to go, that's where you have to connect. And also I realized that they came with a way of life. And still, in Judaism and Christianity and Hinduism, there's some lifestyle, features. There's prayer, there's ethics, there's morals. The problem was that you saw in these various religions some elements that didn't make any sense. We saw some of that in Judaism, we saw some of that in Christianity, we saw some of that in Hinduism, we saw some in Buddhism. So it seemed to me that these discrepancies, these came from the people. People messed it up. That's what people usually do. So a poet says, وَالنَّاسُ إِلَّا عَامِلَانِ فَعَامِلٌ يُتَبِّرُ مَا يُبْنَى وَآخِرُ رَافِرُ. You have two kinds of people in the world. One people, they build up something, they do a lot of work, and they run along. And then you got another guy who comes along and just smashes it. Right? So this is what humans usually do, We see that all around the world today. even though we've gone to the moon and we've gone here, we've done that, and we're just blowing up each other. Okay. So it became, you know, it appeared to me that what happened was that these people came from God and they were teaching basically the same kind of teachings, but somewhere along the line, people corrupted it. They changed it, they corrupted it, they threw their own, as we say, 2 cents into it. So I thought there must be the original one somewhere. Because it's not thinkable that the creator of the universe is going to leave his creation without guidance. It has to be somewhere. And so I'm not finding it where I am, so I need to go and find out where that is. Where would that be? Okay. So I didn't know, you know, I didn't know too much about outside my country. Most of the people, most of my, you know, friends were going to India, they're going to Nepal, and they're going to ashrams, and, you know, I said, no, everybody's doing that, I want to do something different. So I did my research, and the research that I did, I don't say it was academically sound, but nevertheless, whatever research I did, I came to this conclusion that what I'm looking for, I might find in the mountains of Ethiopia. Do we have anybody from Ethiopia?
Yeah.
Where? Yeah, from where?
From Ethiopia.
Where?
Which part of East?
What city?
Diradwa. Diradwa.
Diradwa. I was in Addis Ababa, Asmara, Harar,
Harar is close to Harar.
In Harar? Near Harar. Oh, wonderful place. My first Ramadan was in Harar.
Subhanallah.
So I thought that, you know, because we have, but I didn't go there to become Muslim. I didn't know anything about Islam. We didn't know anything about it. The only thing I knew about Islam was, who's heard of Malcolm X? Anybody heard about Malcolm X? He has an autobiography. If you haven't read that, every Muslim needs to read that. Unbelievable. So we were all big fans of Malcolm X, you know. He was a great, much of a revolutionary and, you know, stood up for truth and all that. And he wrote about, what struck me was, he wrote about when he went to Mecca and he went to, you know, the Muslim lands, and he saw that there's no racism there. This is a big problem in America. Somebody's skin is lighter, somebody's skin is darker, and we got a big problem. I mean, it's weird, you know. When you go into a garden, do you like to see one kind of flower? Or would you like to see different kinds of flowers, different colors, different... Which is a nicer garden?
Different.
Huh? Diverse. That's what we have in the world. We have white, we have yellow, we have black, we have brown, we have all these beautiful colors and beautiful shapes and blue. That's what we're supposed to, We're supposed to marvel at that, you know, and people have a problem. Anyway, so this is a problem until today. They haven't sorted this out in America. You know, that always just, I couldn't understand this. I mean, why are they having a problem with this? So Malcolm writes in his book that there, I went to Mecca and I went to these places, you know, because the black people in America, they used to say that the white people are all devils. That sounds maybe strange to you, maybe not, because most of you are colonized. So you probably would think the same thing, right? Because the only thing you saw from these white people was acting like devils. So, you know, that sounds reasonable. So obviously Malcolm, he grows up in that environment, and that's what he was thinking, you know. And his mentor, you know, that's what he was teaching. And he goes to Makkah, and he goes to, you know, Saudi Arabia and these places. He finds these Muslims are every color. They're from all over the world. White, black, brown, and everybody's brothers, and they all love each other. And you know, so this was very impressive when I saw it. So that's about the only thing I know about Islam. I don't know anything about Islam. But I really like what Malcolm had to say. So, I thought that maybe what I'm looking for is going to be in the mountains of Ethiopia with the Aqbat, the Coptic priests. You know, you would have seen them, right? You know? Because the last prophet that I knew about, we didn't know anything about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We know about Isa, I used to hear about him. So in the mountains of Ethiopia, these Coptic priests in the monastery, they say, we have the original stuff. We've got the original, you know, message of Isa. And I said, okay, I'm going to go there. People said, you know anybody there? No. You speak their language? Do you have any contact? No. So, I mean, you don't know anybody, you know, so how are you going to, you know, how are you going to do that? I said, look, What I'm looking for, he knows that I'm looking, he'll take me there. I'm not worried about it. I don't know how that's how we hippies, used to think, we learned a little about this karma and good vibes and all this kind of thing. So I packed up my bag like the Tablighi guys, it was easy for me, but I didn't travel all over the world like that. Long story anyway. And because we didn't have much time, but what I decided to do was, so I want to go to Ethiopia and join these monks. I don't even know them, I don't even know exactly where they are, but inshallah I'll find them. But I want to also see the Muslims because I was very impressed with Malcolm, I have to say. So I said, okay, I'm going to go from America, I'm going to go to Europe. So I went to Luxembourg, I went down through France, then I went down through Spain, then I went to Morocco. Because every hippie has to go to Morocco. A must. So it's the first Muslim country. And it was Ramadan. The whole country's fasting. So when I get in, they told me, everybody here is fasting. And I told you, I used to fast. We had a different kind of fast, which is just drink water for a week. No food, just water. But here, the whole country, they're all fasting. They said, yeah, even our king. I said, wow, that's unbelievable. There's so many things in Morocco. Morocco's a wonderful. Do we have anybody from Morocco? No Moroccans?
They're coming at Isha.
Huh? Well, you're going to miss out. Or I missed them. Okay, so then, so a lot of stories I have from Morocco, but anyway, so I stay in Morocco for about 6-7 months, and then I see all kinds of interesting things, and I go to Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and I go down from Libya down through Egypt, and there's so many things to tell, but I'll just give one major incident that kind of was the tipping point. So I'm traveling along, it's about a year later, I find myself, I'm in a boat on, anybody from Egypt? Egyptian. Aswan, at the end of the Nile in Buhaira Nasir. Okay? So I've traveled all the way down to Aswan, and I get on a boat. It's an old boat in those days, this is 1971. Okay? And this old boat, it's got people and animals and cargo and everything's on top of it.
Mix up.
Huh?
Mix up all the
Okay, from Allah. So we're going along, and on that boat, there was a group of Sudani camel traders, Bedouin. Anyone from Sudan? Nobody from Sudan. That's the interesting thing about America and Australia. You got Muslims from everywhere in the masjid. Yeah, I love that. So, these Bedouin from Sudan, they used to take their camels and sell them in Egypt, and then they would be coming back. So they're on the boat, and they were making azan, and they would offer their salat in Jamaat. And I was sitting like here. I was another Afro-American musician who also thought he was from Ethiopia. I met him also in Egypt. So we were traveling together. So he thought his ancestors were in Ethiopia. He was trying to find them. And I was going to go do what I was going to do. So we were sitting there together, two of us. And these Sudani guys, they would call the adhan and they would make salat. So I'll never forget the first time I saw this. I've been in Muslim countries, but I have never been in a mosque, because in North Africa, a non-Muslim is not allowed in the mosque. But I always wanted to go and see how they pray and what they do, because I was looking for stuff like that. But I never saw, actually. So now I'm getting a front row seat, live, real time. So these guys are like 5-10 feet in front of me. And they're calling the adhan. And when I was in Morocco, also I connect with some Moroccan musicians. We used to travel around in the villages and play. I learned how to play Moroccan music, and we used to do that. And whenever the adhan used to be called, so I would just stop and listen. That used to really mesmerize me. And actually, we're supposed to stop everything and listen to the adhan. I don't know what he's saying. I said, wow, that's just amazing. I don't know what he's saying, but that's really, really heavy stuff. And my musician buddies, Moroccans, but musicians are musicians everywhere. No salat, no so, no. But they're Muslims. Yeah. So when they see me listening to adhan, they said, let's talk. They said, look, you're our brother, and you know, you're with us as a musician, but we want you to be our real brother, you become a Muslim. They're not following anything in Islam, but they love Islam. You're a Muslim, they're not. And pledge allegiance to our king, Hassan. Yeah, they really have a high regard for their king. That's another long story. I said, well, I'm not interested in any kings, but to be honest, actually that's why I left America. I'm looking for really, if I thought Islam is what I'm looking for, I would do it now, but I don't know that. Of course, I wasn't seeing that in them, that's for sure, you know. But I was seeing different things, interesting things in Morocco. Anyway, so now we're in Egypt, so go back to Egypt. So we're going down and these guys are offering their salat. Now again, this might seem a bit strange for all of you because you've seen salat all your life, right? It's nothing like something, you know, big deal. But for somebody who's never seen, it is the biggest deal. Many people have accepted Islam just by seeing Muslims pray. Yeah. So I'm watching this. Now, imagine you've never seen anybody pray. Now you've got these Bedouins from the desert. You would expect Bedouins from the desert, they're going to be very rough and very, you know, kind of unsophisticated, and that's what we think. Now these guys say, Allahu Akbar. And we're on a boat. And everybody, you know, and these guys are, you know, and I'm looking at this. Wow. Focus, you know. I don't know if you've ever seen Jews or Christians or other people pray. It's nothing like the way we pray. You know, they're moving around, they're singing songs, they're doing all kinds of. Muslims, not only their focus, but the collective, one straight row. So collectively connecting with Allah. Unbelievable, I'm just watching this, wow. Now, Allahu Akbar, they all go into ruku', just like one body. You don't see that discipline in the military. These guys from the desert, look at this. I'm just, you know, looking at this. And then, Sami Allahu liman hamdah rabbana lakal. Allah, when they all went to the sajda, I said, that's it. That's it. Whatever that is, that's it. So I know that Islam, that's what I'm doing. But I've traveled all the way halfway across the world to go to Ethiopia and become a monk, you know. But I said, that's it, I know it is. Now, fast forward again, 1973. So I had already become Muslim back in New York, so just to give a little story here. So we're in a masjid, there's a masjid called State Street Masjid in Brooklyn. It's a very old masjid, one of the first masjids in America. There's an amazing history. Anyway, so a number of us are sitting in that masjid. And that was with the Bangladesh Jamaat, you know, the St. John, 1973, we were sitting there in the masjid. Middle of the night, late in the night, and this is a very dangerous neighborhood, by the way. All the mosques in America used to be in the ghetto. They were always in the dangerous areas. Yeah. So, this knock comes on there, tuk, tuk, tuk. So we're like, who's this, you know? So we said, who is it? Somebody said, let me in, I want to be Muslim. Yeah, okay. So I opened up the door, there's a young Puerto Rican boy. Not young, a young man, in his maybe early 30s, late 20s. He said, let me in here, I need to be a Muslim. Yeah, okay. So he told us his story. His story was that he was, you know, and he comes from the roughest area in New York City. They made a movie about that area. You know, the gangs, it's called the East Side, the West Side Story. It was a famous movie. It was about the gang, or maybe some of you might have heard that. So he comes from that place, that area, very, very khatanak, very, very dangerous place. So he comes in, he said, look, my life was going fine, I had 2 jobs, you know, my wife and my children and all this, and then I get introduced to heroin. And I got addicted, and for 8 years I was on this drug, and I lost everything. I lost my first job, second job, wife left me, children left me, and then I saw my life was over, and I tried to go to hospitals and, you know, rehabilitation programs, and nothing worked. And I just thought, I'm finished. Then what happened? He saw a picture a picture of a Muslim performing sajda. That's all. So he said to himself, if God will listen to anybody, he'll certainly listen to that guy. Sajid. So that's fitrati, that's natural. The Prophet ﷺ says the closest you will be to your Lord is in the sajda. I just thought, when I saw those people in sajda, I said, that's the munta, that is the end word in ubudiyya and worship. So this fellow, he sees a picture. And he was from the Spanish-speaking community. He was from Puerto Rico. So those people are very religious, in their own way, Catholics. So he said, if God is going to listen to somebody, he'll listen to that person. So what did he do? He made sajda. He doesn't know anything about Islam. He doesn't know anything about salat, tahara, nothing. He just makes sajda, and he stays in like that for the whole night. The whole night. And he said, oh God, help me, get me out of this mess. For hours. And he said, when the sun came up, then I picked my head up, and I found I no longer need heroin. I'm cured. He's not even a Muslim yet. How many of us, we're Muslims, how many of us spent the night in sajda? How many of us spent 10 minutes in sajda? So now this fellow he says to himself, if this prostration is so powerful and I've been cured from heroin, 8-year heroin addiction, I don't know if you guys know anything about heroin, but 8 years heroin addiction, it's next to impossible to get off of it. So he says to the religion that this is part of it, where is that? So he's roaming up, he didn't have Google, did a Google search or whatever, and Muslims there was 4 or 5 Islamic Musalla kind of things in New York City in those days. You had to roam out. So he was roaming all over the city trying to find Muslims. By the middle of the night, he finally finds this mosque, and then he becomes. Obviously, that's what he came for. And it was very interesting. So we told him, we were 4 also convert Muslims. We were there in the Mosque, we were traveling around with the Tablighi Jamaat. So he said, we're the Muslims like you, we just became Muslim maybe a year or 2 ago, or whatever. And we're trying to learn our deen and this and that. And so he reached into his pockets. He pulled out everything. He said, this is everything I have in the world. You take that and take me with you. We went to Bangladesh also. Yeah, it was useful. I haven't seen him in a long time. So, anyway, so I'm on the boat and I see this and I just, ultimately, so many things happened, to make a long story short. So I end up in Ethiopia. When I get to Ethiopia, and I find these monks, and they're very interesting. They have beards and they wear turbans and they look like Muslims actually. They dress very similar. You've seen them, right? Yeah, interesting fellows. But the most interesting thing about them was they didn't have any light on their face. It was really strange. I met them. These must be holy people, very religious people. But then I looked at them. They don't look like they're enlightened. No nur, Now, Muslims, Ethiopian Muslim, he's got a shop and he's doing his tasbih and he goes to the masjid. He's full of light. And these guys are monks and all day long, and they're full of darkness. All I needed to do was see that and say, not interested. That's how musicians are, we don't go by, we don't calculate, we go by feelings, which done, I didn't forget it. So then, ultimately, what happens is I just say, okay, and I remember, so there was this fellow, he was an Ethiopian guy, Christian guy, and he used to put on these supernatural kind of shows. I met him, I was traveling in these villages. So this fellow, what he does is, he'll put a big stone on his chest and you take a big hammer and smash it, and the car can run over him and nothing. Pretty interesting guy, actually. So he used to put on these kind of shows, So I met him in some village in Ethiopia, I don't remember where it was. So he said, look, you're a musician, and I put on these shows, so let's collaborate, and you play music, and I'll do this. And so we traveled around these villages in Ethiopia like that. Now the interesting thing is in Ethiopia, you've got half the population of Muslims. People may not know that. And the first hijrah was where, by the way, folks? Huh? Ashama, radiallahu anhu, he was the king of Ethiopia, accepted Islam. They claim that. You've seen his masjid, that masjid?
Has been destroyed.
Yeah, been there? I haven't been there, but actually, I would like to go. So we'd go to these villages, and you'd have Muslims and you'd have Christians. So somehow I would always be attracted to the Muslims, right? And so, and my friend, he didn't like that, I can't say anything because he needs me. He's a nice guy. We had a good friendship, but he didn't like this. Every time I would hang out with this Christian guy, I would always somehow be attracted to the Muslims and hang out with them. So we came to some village. Alaikum salam. We came to some village. I don't remember the name of the village. So I'm walking down the street, and the village has got a dirt road, like villages that are small. So some guy came running up from behind. And then he grabbed me from behind. He said, "We heard there's some American Muslim in our village. Is that you?" So I can't imagine there's any other American in our village. I said, "I guess that's me." So he took my hand. Oh, yeah, you're a Muslim. So yeah, what did he say? So Allah knows, has funny ways sometimes, getting people. So if you see in my hand here, this is 1-8. Notice here, this is very much connected. So you have 18, and then you have 81. So see, this is very connected. That means the 99 names of Allah clear in your hands. You're a Muslim. That's all I needed, I was already sold on the whole thing in the first place. I said, okay, done. That's all I needed was a little push, So then I remember his name was Adam. He used to teach English. He was an English teacher in the village. So he took me home to his house, and then, in Ethiopia they have this scotch, that leaves that they chew. Chant, in Yemen they call it pot, So it's like you chew this leaf, it's like drinking 20 cups of coffee, So all night long we stayed awake, and he taught me alif, ba, ta, ta, jim. He taught me the Arabic alphabet in the night. By the morning, we didn't pray, but he taught me the alphabet. So now in the morning I said, okay, now I'm a Muslim, and now I've learned the alphabet, I'm going back to Addis Ababa, and I'm learning to pray, and I'm learning Arabic, and do it, okay? So, in the morning I tell my friend, his name is Almighty. So I said, look, I'm going back to Addis Ababa, I'm done. No, we're doing so great, you can't do it. So I got on the bus, I went to Addis Ababa, long story, we don't have any time. So long story short, I went back to Addis Ababa, and then I had a lot of problems there because the intelligence community couldn't understand why I was there. Every day they'd interrogate me, what are you doing here? I said, came here looking for religion. Come on, what are you doing here? They wouldn't believe it. So my friends said, no, you go to Yemen because they'll appreciate you and you won't have this kind of problem. So I went to Yemen. And then in Yemen I stayed for some years, some months, I'm sorry. And then in Yemen I met Sheikh Mohammad Hashim, a great alim from Yemen. He died recently. And he was really my first teacher. He really kind of gave me, good instruction in Islam. And then I went on the boat from Hudaydah to Saudi Arabia for Hajj, 1971. And then after Hajj, I got very sick. I never wanted to go back to America, but I had to go back to America for an operation on my lung, which had collapsed along with hepatitis and pneumonia, and it was really a mess. So I studied Arabic language for a year in Los Angeles with the intention to go back to Medina. In those days, Sheikh Abdulaziz bin Baz, he was the rector of the University of Medina. So I wanted to go back to Medina. I met him, he said, yeah, come. But fate would have it that I didn't get back to Saudi Arabia until 1978. And so I did get back, and in 1978, I joined Jamia Qura, and then after graduating, I was sent to Pakistan as a teacher. So a Hollywood musician ultimately being a teacher of Islam in Pakistan. It's kind of an interesting story, I think. I think it just shows the qudrat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if Allah can use some useless big person like me, then He can do it for anyone. So, last thing I'd just like to say is that when I was traveling around the world looking for Islam, had Islam been present in Muslims, I traveled all, I probably would have accepted Islam much sooner. So if we will become good Muslims here in Australia, all we have to do is be good Muslims and be that example. Oh, Australia can accept Islam easily. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all tawfiq to be what we're supposed to be. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاكم